The Power of Semantics, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Devarim. Are you familiar with the following situation? Some guys meet, everything seems fine, everyone's smiling, life is good, but suddenly, for no apparent reason, every word is perceived as negative and everyone starts criticizing. This is how I felt when I read the first two aliyot of Parashat Devarim. The fact that the commentators managed to turn a list of places into a rebuke has already been taken for granted, but the climax for me arrives in Pasuk Yud Bet, Eicha esa levadi torchachem masayechem verivechem, while discussing the way Moshe appointed Israeli judges. Take for example the words torchachem masayechem verivechem, your encumbrance, burden, and strife, that most commentators don't explain in a very flattering fashion. Rashi turns Bnei Israel into people who suddenly find, or maybe invent, evidence or witnesses when they're about to lose in court. They become snoops and apikorsim, at best skeptics, at worst heretics, and they're chronic arguers. Ibn Ezra explains that they're gullible, complainers, quarrelers, and Sforno says the greatest proof of their evil hearts is the need for a ratio of a judge for every 10 people, a characteristic not found anywhere else in the world. But to me, while looking at the verses, it's not that clear that these attacks are really justified. Up until now, no sin has yet been mentioned for which Moshe finds it difficult to deal with the people. The problems really start only at Pasuk 22, when they start talking about the sin of the spies. It seems that what has greatly influenced the commentators' interpretation are the semantics that emerge from the wording. Although the word echa, in which the verse opens, does not always symbolize a negative low, like for example in our case in Perek Zayin, which discusses the laws of war, Perek Yud Chet regarding the laws of prophecy, and the first Perek of Shir HaShirim, upon hearing it, most of us will immediately remember Megillat Eicha and the tragic compilation of prophecies with which Yeshayahu opens his book, and most traditional commentators follow suit. The semantic comparison to Chazon Yeshayahu doesn't end here. All the rare words that appear in our pasuk are repeated together in one more place in Tanakh only. That's why it's natural to associate Eicha, by us, with Eicha hayta lezona kirya ne'emana, torchachem u'masaychem with hayu alay latorach nil'eti neso, rivchem with rivu almana. And even the word levadi that doesn't have an official partner corresponds with the phonetic equivalent, am kved avon. All this before we mention the similar content within the two chapters, the selection of judges in the book of Dvarim, and the inexcusable social behavior, especially in the judicial field in Yeshaya. So really, the commentators learned from the prophet Yeshaya and continued the firm line he built based on our verse. Does the fact that Yeshayahu made a semantic connection between our verse and all that is evil in the legal system justify the continuation of this line by the commentators? In my view, the answer is yes, once we understand that Moshe Rabbeinu did the exact same thing in our very own Parshiya. The phrase in Pasuk Tet that opens the discussion about judge choosing, I cannot carry you alone, lo uchal levadi set etchem, appears almost word for word in the story of the Mitavim when Moshe chooses the 70 elders, where Moshe says, lo uchal anochi levadi laset et kol ha'am hazeh. By all accounts, not a very pleasant story. But here it gets a little bit problematic. The event that Moshe describes is a completely different event. Yitro's advice to appoint judges so that Moshe doesn't collapse. And it's important to note that when Yitro makes this suggestion, there's no hint that Moshe feels the role is a difficult one. And yet Moshe binds these two affairs together with his chosen phrase. I'm not going to go into reasons as to why Moshe combines the two affairs. This isn't the topic, although it is a fascinating subject that definitely deserves discussing in the future. What I am saying is that Moshe himself plants a few very thick semantic hints with which he too criticizes a move that, upon returning to the original story, doesn't seem to be worthy of such criticism, and if the author of the book plants semantic hints in the story, then it's kind of difficult to blame the commentators when they actually take notice of them. It's worth noting that the semantic style which we're discussing really suits the book's setting. The concluding statement of a departing great leader immediately after he learned that he is not going to be the one to complete his life's mission and bring the people of Israel into the Promised Land, a book that isn't written chronologically but rather intuitively. Keep reading Parashat Shavua and following my publications and we might find ourselves discussing this topic again. As to what might happen if you subscribe or forward this to a friend, well, I'm not a prophet. I'm only Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.